The smell of paper and fresh ink greeted Claire Whitmore every morning. At 26, that scent meant more to her than coffee or perfume. It was the smell of truth, of responsibility. Her name was printed in bold on page 3 of the New York Herald: Metatron Labs, the secret trials, and the price of a cure. Months of sleepless nights and dozens of anonymous sources had led to that single headline. Claire picked up her worn leather satchel and slung it over her shoulder. In the hallway mirror, she caught her reflection: chestnut brown hair tied in a messy bun, strands framing a pale, exhausted face. Blue eyes shadowed with fatigue still burned with satisfaction. She smiled faintly, tired but victorious. The threats, the midnight calls, she told herself, were nothing more than the last desperate thrashings of a wounded giant. Conviction was her armor, and hers was forged in facts. Outside, the crisp New York air bit with the promise of winter. She pulled her scarf close, letting the familiar roughness warm her neck as the city pulsed around her. Honking taxis, rushing footsteps, steam from the grates. She loved the anonymity, the freedom of being just another face in the crowd. She didn't know she was about to lose it forever. Her boot heels tapped steadily on the pavement until the harmony shattered. A sound, an engine, but wrong. Not a car, not a truck. Lower, guttural accelerating. She turned her head and saw it. A black sedan, no plates, windows tinted to darkness, cutting against traffic, coming straight at her. Time broke apart. The world slowed to fragments. A man across the street gasped in horror. A pigeon beat its wings into the sky. Claire's body froze, her scream never came, her legs locked. The sedan's grille filled her vision, black metal surging forward like a sun meant to consume her. So this is it, she thought. They weren't bluffing. But the impact came from the side. A brutal force slammed into her, dragging her off her feet. Pain shot through her shoulder as she hit the ground, air ripped from her lungs. Asphalt spun with gray sky, tires screamed. Burning rubber filled her nose. A weight pressed her down. Human weight. The smell of wool, rain, and metallic ozone surrounded her. A calloused hand shielded the back of her head. Another clamped her arm. A heavy coat grazed her cheek. Warm breath brushed her ear. Her vision cleared. A man loomed, eyes the color of frozen steel locked on the fleeing sedan. His jaw clenched, muscles twitching beneath stubble. He looked 40, maybe older. Vigilance had carved his face with sleepless lines. Adrenaline cut through her shock, feeding her anger. "Who the hell are you?" she gasped, struggling to push him away. His grip stayed firm. It wasn't cruel. It was absolute. "Stay down," he ordered, voice cold, controlled, terrifyingly calm. His gaze swept over her face, arms, legs, clinical, efficient, searching for injury. "Can you stand?" "Of course, if you'd let me go," she snapped. A ghost of a smile tugged his mouth before vanishing. He rose in one smooth motion, tall and compact, built like solid steel. Claire pushed herself up, trembling, furious, and afraid, as bystanders whispered and stared. The man ignored them, speaking into the mic on his collar. "Target engaged. Hostile attempt. We are exposed. Extraction required." The word target struck her like ice. She was the target, and him? Hunter or protector? He extended his hand. "We need to leave now." She refused, stumbling upright. "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Who are you?" He stepped closer, closing the distance. His scent overwhelmed her, his pale eyes locked with hers. "Nathan Cole. Your editor hired me a week ago. I've been watching you ever since." "He warned you they'd come, Claire. You didn't listen." 7 days shadowed by this man without her knowing. Her armor cracked, fear flooding in. His hand pressed to her back, guiding her toward her building. His touch wasn't comfort, it was possession. She entered her building like a prisoner. The heavy door shut behind them with a final echo. Life would never be the same. The man beside her wasn't just a bodyguard. He was her captor, her cage, and she was already inside. Claire's apartment, once her safe haven, now felt like occupied territory. Nathan moved through it with quiet efficiency, not like a guest, but like a soldier mapping a battlefield. He didn't walk, he patrolled, eyes scanning every corner, every window, every shadow. Claire stood rigid in the center of the living room, arms crossed, fists clenched to hide the tremor in her hands. Anger pressed against fear until her voice broke through. "You had no right to follow me, to invade my privacy." Nathan turned slowly, his gaze heavy with exhaustion, not arrogance. "Your right to privacy ends where their right to kill you begins." That car wasn't a warning. It was an attempt, The next won't be public. His words dismantled her denial, cutting through her defenses one by one. He crossed to the window where she often drank her morning coffee and studied the glass. The lock, the sight lines from across the street. Standard pane, cheap lock, fire escape right there. It's an open invitation. Claire bristled. I've lived here 5 years. Without turning, he replied, and they've only known you're a threat for weeks. Your world changed. You just don't realize it yet. His voice was calm, factual, but each word tightened the cage around her. He pulled out a rugged phone, tapping quickly. Richard's on his way. He'll explain. Pack a bag. Her back stiffened. A bag? I'm not going anywhere. He faced her fully, stepping closer until she had to look up at him. His scent filled her senses, rain and wool mixed with the faint trace of soap. His voice carried steel. This isn't a negotiation. Your apartment is compromised. Your routine is compromised. You are compromised. From now on, you don't have a pattern. You have me. Her heart pounded against her ribs. So I'm your prisoner? His jaw tightened. It means you're alive, and it's my job to keep it that way. He turned toward her bedroom as if he owned the space. Shock jolted her into motion. Where do you think you're going? He didn't even look back. Checking exits, making sure you don't pack something stupid. Rage burned hot in her chest as she followed him. He stepped into her most private place, scanning the bed, the books, the photos of friends and family. His expression revealed nothing, but she felt stripped bare under his scrutiny. He opened her closet. Need help? The question was dry, almost mocking. Get out of my room, she hissed. To her surprise, he obeyed, retreating to lean against the hallway wall. Arms folded, a sentinel at her door, hands shaking. Claire pulled a suitcase from the closet and stuffed it with jeans, sweaters, and essentials, each item feeling like a piece of her life surrendered. She zipped the bag hard, the sound final. Dragging it into the living room, she found Nathan waiting, eyes on the door, posture carved from stone. The bell rang. His body tensed instantly, hand sliding to the weapon at his waistband. The sight was so surreal in her sunlit apartment that her breath caught. Were you expecting someone? He asked sharply. Richard, she whispered. Nathan gestured for her to stay back, then pressed flat against the wall. Ask who it is. Her throat tightened. Who is it? It's me, Claire. Richard. His voice through the wood was the first comfort she'd felt all day. Nathan opened the door, his body blocking most of the entry. Richard stepped in, graying hair, worry etched across his face. His eyes darted from Claire to Nathan. Thank God, are you all right? Claire's voice was flat. I'm fine. Richard shook Nathan's hand. Thank you. Nathan nodded once. She needs to leave. They know where she is. Richard turned to Claire. We have a place. Secure, out of the city. I underestimated how far they'd go. I'm so sorry, she asked. Where? Nathan answered for him. Classified. The fewer who know, the safer it is. The implication was clear, not even her editor would know. Richard placed a hand on her arm, eyes pleading. Trust him, Claire. He's the best there is. She glanced at Nathan. He didn't look proud, only resigned. He picked up her suitcase as if it weighed nothing, his other hand steady on her back, guiding her out of the home she loved. She didn't look at Richard. She looked at Nathan and knew her life was no longer her own. The drive out of the city was silence and speed. Nathan's choice of vehicle wasn't an armored convoy, but a plain gray SUV indistinguishable from thousands on the highway. Anonymity was armor. He drove with surgical precision, his hands steady on the wheel, eyes scanning mirrors, traffic, and exits without rest. Claire sat in the passenger seat, body rigid, fingers clenched together in her lap. She tried to focus on the blur of autumn trees outside, red and gold flashing against a gray sky. But every breath, every shift of fabric from the man beside her pulled her awareness back to him. His scent filled the car, not cologne but something elemental, wool, skin, and faint gunpowder. It unsettled her, because beneath the fear was something else, a treacherous current she didn't want to name. Where are we going? Her voice sounded loud in the quiet. A safe place, Nathan answered, eyes fixed on the road. The clipped reply was designed to end the conversation. She wasn't satisfied. I'm not a package to be delivered. I deserve to know. He sighed, patience strained. A private estate in western Massachusetts. Secluded, secure, owned by a client overseas. No one knows we're there. Satisfied? His irony pricked her nerves. Not even close. What about my work? You expect me to knit while the biggest story of my life collapses? He gave her a quick glance, sharp enough to steal her breath. My job isn't to manage your career. It's to keep you alive. You can continue from there if you follow my rules. No unsecured devices, no unsupervised calls. All communication goes through me. Her defiance sparked. Through your censorship, you mean? A ghost of a smile tugged his lips. Call it what you want. The tension between them thickened into a duel, unspoken challenges crackling in the narrow space of the car. Hours later, he left the highway, steering onto winding back roads that cut through small towns and thick forests. Her phone signal vanished. Civilization fell behind them until even the gravel road disappeared under a blanket of fallen leaves. The SUV climbed steeply into the hills until the trees opened into a clearing. At its center stood a house. Not the rustic cabin she imagined, but a sleek structure of glass, steel, and dark wood rising from the landscape like it had been carved into the mountain. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a breathtaking valley painted in autumn fire. Isolated, beautiful, a glass cage. Nathan parked in a hidden garage beneath the house. "Welcome to your new home," he said flatly. He led her inside. The interior was stark and masculine. Black leather, polished concrete, a massive stone fireplace. Cold, impersonal, perfectly clean, like someone maintained it but never lived here. "The place is self-sufficient," he explained. "Independent generator, its own well, security system. No one gets within 2 miles without me knowing." Claire dropped her suitcase to the floor with a thud. She moved to the glass wall, staring at the valley below. She could see the world, but the world couldn't see her. She was invisible and completely at his mercy. "There are rules," Nathan said, turning toward her. "Rule 1, never leave the house without me. Rule 2, all doors and windows locked, I control the locks. Rule 3, if something happens, you don't investigate. You go to the panic room." He pointed toward a steel door hidden in the fireplace wall. "Understood?" His tone was a professor instructing a stubborn student. Her chin lifted. "And if I don't agree?" He stepped close, his eyes a challenge. "Then I handcuff you to the bed for your safety. Choice is yours." Heat rushed up her neck. He wasn't bluffing. He never bluffed. Her defiance faltered. "Understood," she muttered. "Good. Your room is at the end of the hall. Mine is next to it. Unpack. Try to relax." The word relax was so absurd she almost laughed. Trapped. With a lethal stranger in a glass fortress, relaxation was impossible. She unpacked slowly in the cold, impersonal room he assigned her. Folding clothes into an empty closet felt like surrender. Later, the smell of food lured her to the kitchen, where she found him cooking, sleeves rolled up, muscles flexing under his black shirt as he chopped vegetables with mechanical rhythm. The image clashed violently with the man who'd thrown her from the path of a car. Who was Nathan Cole? Protector, captor, or something else? He slid a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of her, along with steaming coffee. The simple meal smelled like salvation. She realized she hadn't eaten all day. They ate in silence until she finally whispered, "Thank you." He nodded without looking up. She studied him, then dared. "Has this happened before? A mission like this?" His fork stopped. He set it down, lifted his eyes. The cold was gone, replaced by something darker, haunted. "Once," he said softly. It didn't end well. For the first time, Claire saw past the fortress of control to the broken man beneath. The bodyguard and jailer vanished. What sat before her was someone wounded, burdened, and frighteningly humanly. And in that moment, she realized the greatest danger to her heart wasn't outside these walls. It was sitting across from her at the table. The following days unfolded in a strange, suspended routine. The glass house became their entire world, a cage of light and silence. Nathan established a perimeter, both physical and emotional. At dawn, he swept the property with the silent precision of a predator, vanishing into the trees and returning an hour later, face unreadable, carrying the scent of cold forest air. During the day, he let Claire work. He had set up a small office with a secure laptop and encrypted phone line. "Everything goes through my firewall," he told her. "It's the only way." She threw herself into her investigation, her voice hushed on calls with sources, while somewhere in the house Nathan's presence pulsed like an invisible shield. She could feel him even when she couldn't see him. Sometimes she looked up to find him in the hallway watching, his face unreadable, measuring not her work, but her strength. Nights were harder. After their silent dinners, emptiness pressed against the glass walls, the darkness outside vast and suffocating. Only the crackle of fire in the stone hearth filled the silence. One night a storm broke over the mountains. Rain slashed the windows in furious sheets. Thunder rolled so deep it rattled the floors. Lights flickered once, twice, then died, plunging the house into blackness. Claire gasped, fear striking like lightning. Nathan's voice cut through the dark. Calm. Close. "Stay where you are." A beam of white light flared as he moved with the flashlight in one hand, his other resting on the gun at his side. "The generator should have kicked in. If it didn't, that means trouble." He motioned her behind him. He led her toward the panel near the entrance, his body a barrier between her and the storm pressing against the glass. Lightning lit the valley in blinding flashes, tree branches thrashing like monsters in the wind. She stumbled on a rug, but his hand shot back, gripping her arm firmly, steadying her. He didn't let go, guiding her with unyielding strength. At the panel, he flipped breakers. Nothing. "Sabotage," he muttered. Simple but effective. Someone cut the ignition wire. Claire's blood turned to ice. They knew she was here. He pulled her toward the glass wall, scanning the storm with night vision binoculars. She pressed close, trembling, her forehead against the cold glass. Then she saw it. A light at the tree line. A faint sweep like a flashlight moving across the woods. Her breath hitched. "Nathan," she whispered. He appeared instantly beside her. "Where?" She pointed, hands shaking. He searched through the binoculars, his silence stretching. Finally, he lowered them. "I don't see anything, but that doesn't mean they're not out there. The generator was cut. They were here." Terror clawed through her chest. Her knees gave out. Nathan caught her, turning her to face him, hands gripping her shoulders firmly. Lightning lit his face in stark flashes. His eyes locked on hers. "Breathe, Claire. Look at me. Breathe." She gasped shallowly, panic swallowing her. His hand rose, rough thumb stroking her cheek, an impossibly gentle gesture from a man made of stone. "They won't get in. I won't let them. Do you hear me? I won't let them." His words were an anchor, his touch a lifeline. The storm outside faded into a blur. In that moment, the only thing she could see, hear, or feel was him. He guided her to the sofa by the fire, relit the flames with efficient movements, and sat on the floor between her and the wall of glass, gun within reach. "They want us nervous," he said calmly. "They want us to react. We won't. We control the board, not them." Firelight reflected in his eyes, melting ice into liquid amber. Claire curled under a blanket, still trembling, but strangely reassured. He didn't relax, not even as the storm raged. His head moved constantly, listening, watching. To her, he was a wall of flesh and willpower, dangerous, terrifying, but also the only thing keeping her from falling apart. Hours dragged by in silence, broken only by thunder and the hiss of rain. At last her body gave in, her head tilting as sleep pulled at her eyes. Nathan's voice rumbled low. "Sleep. I can't," she whispered. "Try." Exhaustion swallowed her. She drifted into unconsciousness, waking only when thunder cracked violently overhead. Nathan was still there, statue still, eyes on the storm. "Just thunder," he murmured. It was nearly 3 a.m. He had not moved, had not slept. The realization hit her like a weight. He had kept watch all night, protecting her. Gratitude flooded her, tangled with something far more dangerous. She slid from the sofa onto the floor, sitting near him, firelight brushing her skin. "Then I won't sleep either," she said softly. He turned his head toward her, eyes unreadable, then simply nodded, accepting her presence. They sat together. In the storm's chaos, their silence no longer empty but alive with something fragile, unspoken and undeniable. Dawn broke pale and gray, the storm spent but the air still heavy with tension. Nathan disappeared into the woods for a perimeter check while Claire stayed by the fire, staring into the embers. When he returned an hour later, his face was carved with exhaustion. "They're gone," he said. "Tracks near the tree line, professionals. They pulled back when the storm ended." Relief washed over her, dizzying. "So it's over?" He shook his head, eyes hard. "No, it was a test. They know we're here. They know we're not an easy target. Next time will be different." His voice carried the weight of certainty, and she realized with dread that her life had shifted into a war she couldn't escape. The day passed strangely quiet. The sun turned the glass house into a glowing box, burning away shadows but not the unease between them. Nathan worked methodically, repairing the generator, reinforcing the perimeter. Fatigue dragged at him. The lines around his eyes deepened, his stubble darkened, his movements slowed, deliberate, held together by sheer discipline. Claire watched him, frustration rising. "You need to sleep," she said firmly as she set a mug of steaming coffee in front of him. He tested the lights, flipping a switch, refusing to meet her gaze. "Later, I need to stay ahead of them." She pushed the cup closer. Their fingers brushed briefly, heat sparking up her arm. He ignored it. "They won't try the same move twice. I need to anticipate the next one." She leaned forward, anger mixing with concern. "You can't do this alone." His eyes snapped up, locking on hers with brutal intensity. "I'm not alone. I'm with you. That's why I can't fail." His words struck deep. He wasn't boasting, he was swearing an oath. The responsibility he carried pressed against her chest as if it were her own. Later that evening, she found him by the glass wall, the valley awash in golden light. His shoulders sagged, defenses cracking under exhaustion. "That's enough," she said gently but firmly. "You're going to sleep. This isn't a request." He opened his mouth to protest but stopped when he saw the resolve in her eyes. A weary smile tugged his lips. "Since when do you give the orders?" "Since the man in charge can barely stand," she countered. "I'll keep watch. Teach me what to look for." He studied her tactical mind, weighing the risk. Finally he nodded. 4 hours. Wake me no matter what, unless the house is on fire." She nodded. He walked down the hall slowly, every step weighted with exhaustion, disappearing into his room. For the first time since this ordeal began, Claire was alone, and the responsibility of the night pressed down like a heavy cloak. She sat in his chair facing the windows, scanning the darkness. The first 2 hours were torture. Every creak, every whisper of wind sent her heart racing. By the third, a rhythm set in. She listened, learned, trained herself to distinguish normal from abnormal. For the first time, she glimpsed the lonely burden Nathan lived with every day. When the 4th hour came, she rose and walked softly down the hallway. His door was ajar. The room was shadowed in moonlight. Nathan lay on top of the bed, still dressed, one arm flung over his eyes, chest rising in slow, deep rhythm. His gun rested on the nightstand beside a worn paperback. Claire hesitated, then stepped inside, drawn by something she couldn't resist. He looked younger in sleep, tension gone, the lines of worry softened. For the first time she saw the man beneath the soldier. Her hand lifted, trembling. She brushed a strand of dark hair from his forehead with feather-light touch. It was a mistake. His eyes snapped open instantly, icy blue and lethal. In one blur of motion he seized her wrist and her throat, flipping her down against him, caging her above his body. Her breath stopped, fear and shock colliding. His eyes burned with instinct, a predator awakened. Then just as quickly horror filled them. Recognition dawned. His grip loosened and he shoved himself back as if burned. "Claire, I'm sorry, I was—" His voice broke, raw with shame. She sat frozen, heart pounding, the print of his fingers still burning on her skin. "I shouldn't have touched you," she whispered. "No," he said tightly, hands raking through his hair, face turned away. "There's no excuse." The silence was heavy, suffocating. She rose shakily, retreating toward the door. "I'll make more coffee," she muttered, desperate to break the spell. "Claire," his voice stopped her. He sat on the edge of the bed, shadowed by moonlight. Thank you for letting me sleep. Vulnerability trembled in his words. She understood then. His violence hadn't been a choice. It was instinct, reflex from a lifetime of war. The horror he carried wasn't from almost hurting her. It was from almost breaking his oath to protect her. She closed the door quietly behind her, leaning against the cold hallway wall, breath shaking. The mark of his hand had already faded, but the ache in her chest lingered. Not fear, something far more dangerous. Morning came, but no relief followed. The house felt charged, haunted by what had happened in the dark of Nathan's room. The silence between them was no longer the silence of strangers. It was the silence of something broken, something dangerously intimate. At breakfast, they moved around each other with careful steps, their words clipped, their gazes avoiding contact. Nathan was colder than before, the wall around him rebuilt higher, but now Claire knew the truth. It wasn't to keep her out, it was to keep himself in. For her, the confusion was worse. The memory of his grip still lingered on her neck, terrifying yet strangely intimate. She replayed it over and over, not with fear but with a restless ache. She had seen him undone, stripped of control, and that glimpse was addictive. She tried to lose herself in her work, but her mind kept drifting back to him, his footsteps in the hall, his breathing in the stillness, the aura of tension that followed him everywhere. The awareness of him had become constant, an invisible thread binding her to him. On the third day, the pressure snapped. Nathan was in the home gym, shirtless, his body gleaming with sweat as he pummeled the heavy bag with brutal force. It wasn't training, it was exorcism. Every strike was an explosion of violence, his muscles taut and scarred, his back a map of old battles. Claire froze at the doorway, breath caught in her throat, watching him burn his demons into the leather. He knew she was there. He always knew. Without turning, he asked, voice sharp, "What do you want, Claire?" "I want you to stop," she said, forcing strength into her voice. "Stop avoiding me. Stop acting like I'm fragile." He turned slowly, sweat dripping down his stubbled face, eyes blazing with a storm he couldn't contain. "I almost hurt you," he confessed, voice cracking. "But you didn't," she shot back, stepping into the room. It was a reflex. "I understand," his voice exploded. "You don't understand. My job is to protect you, not to be another threat. That's why there are rules. That's why there's a line," her temper flared. "The line is gone, Nathan. It disappeared the night of the storm when you touched my face in the dark. It disappeared when I trusted you enough to watch you sleep. And it disappeared when I saw the horror in your eyes. Not because you saw me as a threat, but because you cared." Her words rang through the gym like a blade cutting through armor. He froze, chest heaving, torn between duty and desire. "You have no idea," he whispered, his voice raw. "No idea what I feel." Then the distance collapsed. He crossed the space in a heartbeat, one hand gripping her hair, tilting her head back, the other crushing her against his damp, powerful body. His mouth claimed hers in a kiss of hunger and desperation, a storm unleashed after years of silence. His lips were rough, his taste salt and fire, his beard scraping her skin. For a heartbeat, she was frozen. Then she answered, pouring every ounce of fear, anger, and loneliness into the kiss. Her hands clawed at his shoulders, nails digging into steel-hard muscle, needing to feel he was real. The kiss deepened into a battle, a surrender, a confession. He pressed her against the mirrored wall, cold glass biting her back while heat seared her front. His hands explored her with fierce urgency, mapping her body as if to claim it. One calloused thumb traced her jaw, the same place he had once held with violence, now touched with reverence. When they finally broke apart, foreheads pressed together, breath ragged, their reflections in the mirror showed two strangers consumed by fire. Her whisper broke the silence. "Nathan." His eyes closed, his forehead resting against hers. "God help me, I know." The words were an admission, a surrender. There was no going back. The kiss lingered in the air like a storm that refused to fade. Nathan pulled back first, the separation a physical wound. His hand raked through his damp hair, his chest heaving. The fire in his eyes hadn't gone out, but panic swirled in its wake. "This can't happen again," he said, voice hoarse, each word scraping his throat. Claire lifted her chin, defiance flashing. "Why not? Because of your rules? Because of the line? Or because you're scared?" The word struck him like a blow. His jaw tightened, the mask of control snapping back into place. "I'm not scared." She stepped closer, pressing her hand flat against his bare chest, feeling the thunder of his heartbeat. Liar, you're terrified. Not of them out there. Of this, of me. You're afraid of feeling something you can't control. His resistance crumbled. His eyes dropped to her hand, then back to her face. His voice came out broken. Yes, I'm terrified. I haven't felt anything but duty and guilt for so long that I don't know how to handle this. Handle you. The confession shook her more than his kiss had. It wasn't the words of a soldier. It was the surrender of a man. Claire's voice softened. Then let me show you. She rose on her toes, kissed him again, this time slow, tender. A question rather than a demand. He answered with hesitant passion, his hands cupping her face as if she were something fragile and precious, his thumb stroking her skin with reverence. When he pulled back, his forehead still pressed to hers, his warning was a whisper. Claire, if we do this, there's no going back. I know, she breathed. And I don't want to. That was enough. He swept her into his arms with effortless strength. She wrapped her legs around his waist, her arms clinging to his neck, burying her face against his shoulder. He carried her down the hall, past the door to her room without pause, and into his. Nathan's room was as stark as the man himself. Neatly made bed, a few books on strategy, his gun and wallet on the nightstand. No comforts, no softness, only discipline. He set her down gently, the mattress dipping beneath her. For a moment he stood there, hesitation written across his face, the last barrier of a man who had denied himself happiness for years. Claire refused to let fear claim him. She pulled her shirt over her head, letting it fall to the floor. Then her pants, her shoes. Each movement was steady, deliberate, an act of trust. She offered not just her body, but her choice, her surrender, her strength. He watched her with awe, not lust. His eyes roamed as though he were seeing sunlight after years underground. When she reached her hand out to him, her voice a whisper, "Come here." The spell broke. He sat beside her, taking her hand in his, kissing her fingers one by one, his gaze never leaving hers. It was devotion, raw and silent. Then he kissed her, gently at first, then with rising heat as he laid her back against the sheets, his body covering hers not as a weight, but as a shield. Their lovemaking was not a storm of violence, but a reverent exploration. Every touch a conversation, every kiss a vow. His hands, capable of breaking bones, moved with precision and care, mapping her as if to memorize every curve, every breath. Claire traced the scars on his back, not with pity but with acceptance. Each one a story she silently claimed as her own. When he entered her, it was slow, almost painful in its tenderness. Both of them gasping at the perfection of the fit, the relief of belonging. Their eyes stayed locked, emotions laid bare. It wasn't just sex, it was communion. The merging of two broken souls. The rhythm built, tenderness giving way to urgency, their bodies crashing together until climax tore through them like fire. She cried his name into his shoulder, and he groaned against her skin, holding her like she was the only anchor in his universe. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the fading light. Nathan propped on his elbow, his eyes soft for the first time, filled with something so deep it stole her breath. She touched his lips with her finger. Don't say anything. Not now. They didn't need words. In that room, in that golden moment, they had created a sanctuary. But both knew reality waited beyond the glass walls, and the fragile peace they had stolen would have to be defended at any cost. The morning after was a fragile illusion of normalcy. Sunlight spilled across the valley, warming the glass walls, but inside the house, tension simmered. Claire woke tangled in Nathan's arms, his body still curled protectively around hers as if even in sleep he was guarding her. For a fleeting moment, she let herself believe they were ordinary, just a man and a woman waking together in peace. But the scars on his chest pressed against her skin reminded her of the truth. Danger lived in his body like breath. She slipped from the bed, padding silently across the room. Nathan stirred instantly, eyes snapping open, hand reaching instinctively for the gun on the nightstand. When he realized it was her, he exhaled heavily, lowering the weapon. "Sorry," he muttered. "Habit." Claire gave a faint smile. "You really don't know how to be off duty, do you?" He sat up, dragging a hand through his hair. "Not when you're still a target." Over breakfast, she tried to breach the walls he'd rebuilt overnight. "Do you regret last night?" she asked softly. Nathan froze, fork halfway to his mouth. His silence was answer enough. She felt the sting, but pressed on. "Because I don't." For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt alive. His gaze locked with hers, blue eyes burning. It doesn't matter what I feel. My job is to keep you safe, not to want you. She leaned forward, voice low, fierce. But you do. He pushed back from the table, chair scraping sharply against the floor. That's the problem. He stalked down the hall, leaving her trembling with frustration and longing. The distance between them lasted hours until dusk fell. Claire sat in the office, typing notes for her exposé, when she noticed movement outside the glass wall. At first she thought it was her imagination, the shadows of trees in the wind, but then she saw it clearly. A man, dark clothing, crouched at the edge of the clearing. Her breath caught, heart pounding. "Nathan!" she shouted. He was there instantly, gun in hand, eyes scanning. "Where?" She pointed with a shaking finger. But when he looked through the binoculars, the space was empty. "Nothing," he said flatly. "But you saw him?" She nodded furiously. Yes, Nathan moved like lightning. He killed the interior lights, plunged the house into darkness, and activated hidden steel shutters that sealed over the glass walls. "Panic room," he ordered. Claire hesitated. "What about you?" His jaw clenched. "I draw them out." He shoved the pistol into her hands, the cold metal shocking her. "Safety's off. If anyone gets past me, shoot. Don't hesitate." Terror surged in her chest. "I can't." He cut her off sharply. "You can. Survive now, argue later." Then he vanished into the night. The silence was unbearable. Claire sat inside the steel room, clutching the gun with shaking hands, ears straining for sound. A crack of gunfire split the night. Then another. Shouts, muffled but close. Her breath came in short gasps, panic clawing at her throat. Minutes dragged like hours. Then suddenly the door swung open. Nathan stumbled inside, sweat and dirt streaking his face, blood on his arm. Claire dropped the pistol and rushed to him. "You're hurt!" He waved her off, closing the steel door behind him. "It's nothing. Graze, they're gone for now." She pressed a towel against the wound, hands trembling as she tried to stop the bleeding. He watched her in silence, his jaw tight with pain, but his eyes softened at her determination. "You shouldn't be touching me," he murmured. "Too late for that," she whispered back. Their gazes locked, heat sparking even as blood stained her hands. For the first time she understood. Danger wasn't just outside. It was between them, fierce and undeniable. When his breathing steadied, she looked at him fiercely. "We can't keep living like this, waiting for them to strike, pretending what's between us doesn't exist. You need me as much as I need you." Nathan's voice broke, raw and hoarse. "Needing you is what makes me weak, and weakness will get you killed." Claire touched his face, her thumb tracing the stubble along his jaw. "Or it will make you fight harder for me, for us." His silence was long, tortured. Then slowly he covered her hand with his own. For one brief moment, the soldier let himself be a man. The attack changed everything. The glass house no longer felt like a cage. It felt like a battlefield. Nathan moved with sharper edges now. Every hour a drill, every sound outside a potential threat. He reinforced doors, reset traps, doubled the patrols he made around the property. Sleep became a luxury he couldn't afford. Claire tried to follow his rules, but the weight of his wounds and his silence gnawed at her. At night she watched him sit by the fireplace, gun resting on his thigh, eyes fixed on the flames. He was close enough to touch, but felt a world away. Finally, she couldn't take it. One evening, when the valley was swallowed in darkness and only firelight painted his face, she crossed the room and sat in front of him. "Talk to me." He didn't move. "There's nothing to say." She shook her head. "That's a lie. You bleed for me, you fight for me, you watch me like I'm the only thing in your world, and you still pretend I mean nothing?" His jaw tightened. "You mean too much. That's the problem." His voice cracked, rough with emotion. "The last woman I protected died because I got too close. I swore I'd never let that happen again." Claire's breath caught. The haunted look in his eyes was worse than the storm, worse than the bullets.
"What happened?"
He stared into the fire as if it were a grave. Her name was Julia, a diplomat's daughter. Bright, fearless. They came for her in the night. "I killed 6 men before they took her. I wasn't fast enough. They made me watch." His voice broke, and for the first time she saw tears glisten at the corners of his eyes. He blinked them away, but the pain carved into his face was permanent. Without thinking, Claire reached out, taking his scarred hand in both of hers. "That wasn't your fault." He shook his head violently. "Everything is my fault. That's what it means to be me. That's why I can't want you. Because the moment I let myself, you're already dead. Her heart ached, but she refused to let go. You're wrong. Wanting me doesn't make me weak. It makes me stronger. And you're not alone this time. She leaned closer, pressing his hand against her chest over her racing heart. Do you feel that? That's not weakness. That's life. Something shattered in him. With a guttural sound, he pulled her into his lap, crushing his mouth to hers. The kiss was violent, desperate, as if he was drowning and she was air. She clung to him, her hands in his hair, her body pressed against the solid wall of his chest. He lifted her effortlessly, carrying her toward the bedroom, kicking the door shut behind them. Their clothes fell in a trail, urgency overtaking restraint. This time there was no tenderness, no hesitation, only fire. He devoured her with kisses, his hands rough with need, his body shaking with the force of everything he had denied. She met him with equal hunger, surrendering and claiming him in the same breath. They came together with a ferocity that bordered on pain, each thrust a battle, each gasp a surrender. He held her wrists pinned above her head, his eyes burning into hers, and she saw it then. Not the bodyguard, not the soldier, but the man stripped bare, clinging to her as if she were salvation. When release tore through them, it was like a storm breaking, violent and unstoppable. He collapsed against her, breath ragged, heart pounding. She wrapped her arms around him, holding him as tightly as he held her, both of them trembling in the aftershock. In the silence that followed, Nathan whispered against her skin, voice breaking. If anything happens to you, I won't survive it. Claire kissed his temple, her own tears falling. Then don't let anything happen to me. The vow hung between them, fragile and unbreakable. For the first time, Nathan didn't fight it. He simply held her, as if letting go would mean the end of both their worlds. The peace didn't last. 3 nights later, alarms shattered the silence. Red lights flashed across the steel shutters, sirens echoing through the glass house. Nathan was on his feet before Claire had fully woken, gun in hand, eyes hard. They've found us, he barked. Get to the panic room. Claire's pulse raced, fear tearing through her, but she stood frozen. What about you? I'll hold them off, he snapped. Move! But she shook her head fiercely. I'm not leaving you. His glare burned. This isn't a choice. Gunfire exploded outside, glass shattering as reinforced panels absorbed the first wave. Nathan shoved her toward the steel door, but she twisted free, grabbing the second pistol he'd taught her to use. If you're fighting, so am I. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked, blue against burning defiance. He cursed under his breath, then nodded once. Stay behind me. The front door burst inward, armed men flooding the entryway, rifles raised. Nathan moved like a storm unleashed, precise and lethal, bullets flying as he cut them down with brutal efficiency. Claire's hand shook, but she fired too, the recoil jolting her shoulder, one attacker falling to her shot. Adrenaline drowned her terror. The fight was chaos, gunfire, shouts, the smell of smoke and cordite. Nathan was everywhere at once, shielding her, striking, killing. But there were too many. A grenade clattered across the floor. Nathan grabbed her, dragging her behind the heavy stone fireplace as the explosion tore through the room. Glass and wood splintering. Pain seared across Claire's arm as shrapnel cut her skin. She cried out, but Nathan's body shielded hers, his back taking the brunt. When the smoke cleared, blood streaked down his side. She pressed her hands against the wound, desperate. You're bleeding too much. He gritted his teeth, firing into the smoke. Focus. Stay alive. Reinforcements arrived, not enemies, but Richard with a tactical team, storming through the rear entrance. Clear, clear. The gunfire ceased. The attackers fled into the night, their retreat covered by the forest. The house was wrecked, walls scorched, glass shattered, but it still stood. Nathan slumped against the fireplace, blood soaking his shirt, his face pale. Claire knelt beside him, refusing to let go. Stay with me. You can't leave me now. His hand cupped her cheek, bloodied but steady. You're safe. That's all that matters. Tears blurred her vision. No, you matter. Medics pulled him onto a stretcher. As they carried him out, his eyes never left hers, and she clung to his hand until the last possible second. Hours later at the hospital, she sat by his bed, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest as machines beeped softly. When his eyes opened, relief flooded her like light. He tried to speak, but she pressed her finger to his lips. Don't, just listen. You saved me, Nathan, but you also saved yourself. You don't have to be alone anymore. Not with me. For the first time, he smiled. Weak, broken, but real. His hand found hers, gripping tightly. In that sterile room surrounded by scars and silence, they made a vow without words. They had survived the storm together, and whatever waited beyond the hospital walls, they would face it side by side. Claire leaned down, pressing her lips softly to his. It wasn't desperation this time. It was promise.